Happy August, everybody. Kevin Bowen. Another edition of Kevin's Corner. We are in studio. Chris Presley rocking his Volunteers.
That's right.
Nice polo today in studio.
We both do. We're both representing our favorites.
Yeah, I got a little Masters action here. You know, first major of the year. Figure might as well be the loser golf fan that I am and, rock it. So, little bit of news, certainly, to get into on today's Kevin's Corner. We'll touch on the players with the most to prove this year, kind of another annual segment that we do. Lots and lots of Twitter questions. But I feel like finally we're moving in somewhat of a one step in front of the other direction in the NFL. It's not the biggest steps that people would like to see, but they are steps forward, and that means something. And it means something in a positive manner. I'll get into that a little bit more on the podcast. But, so far, I think, I don't know, what are we, about a week into camp-ish?
Mm-hmm.
So good, I think.
So far.
Yeah.
I like the behind-the-scenes video that the Colts had on their Twitter of Paris Campbell kind of walking you through just some of the different steps that they're going to be taking this year.
Agreed. I thought that was a cool aspect and gets you a little bit behind the curtain of what exactly it looks like for normalcy in training camp and in the NFL right now. So, I thought that was cool to see. And as far as people wondering, when will the media get out there? I'm hoping next week. If not next week, certainly the week after that. But maybe even next week, that's when the Colts will start practice. Not full pads, but they'll get on the practice field. This week is just strength and conditioning. Hopefully I'll be able to be on site and just get a little bit more eyes and ears as to what the Colts look like here in 2020.
Yeah, and your media availability today, still on Zoom. You talked to Reich and to Rivers. Some interesting news coming from Frank Reich. What's your takeaway from that?
Yeah, I was curious if he was going to mention any guys opting out as we now approach the deadline. As we record this, we are 25 hours from the deadline, so with our luck, something else will happen. But here we are, going to record anyways. Marvell Tell, Roland Milligan, two names that I think listeners of this podcast will recognize. Certainly Marvell Tell, I would expect. But now that's three names so far for the Colts. When they entered Tuesday, I want to say they were one of 8 or 9 teams in the entire NFL not to have a player opt out up to that point. Sky Moore yesterday, then Marvell Tell and Roland Milligan today. I guess my thoughts are this, Chris, and I'll first start off by saying impact on the team with all of these guys. Sky Moore, I thought, had very little shot to make the 53-man roster. He's on the deepest position group on the team. He's the only non-Chris Ballard draft pick at linebacker. Chris Ballard has totally revamped that room. He's drafted everybody besides Sky Moore, who was a notable undrafted free agent. He was a leading tackler at South Carolina every single year. He actually started as an undrafted free agent in week 1 in 2018. That probably shows you, more so where the Colts were at that point as a football team. But, practice squad at best sort of thing. The Colts, that's a position group that we've talked about, is deep. And so, I didn't think Sky Moore would make this team. Milligan and Tell, these are notable losses. And they might not seem that notable to fans on August 5th, but let's talk about it again on October 5th or November 5th when, Rocky Sean's hurt a hamstring and could be out 2 to 3 weeks. Or, Kari Willis is dealing with a stinger and might be out 2 to 3 weeks. Milligan and Tell both played somewhat meaningful roles for this football team last year. Probably Tell more so than Milligan. But if they're playing meaningful roles for you last year, well, now let's factor in COVID and the depth being the most important thing in the world right now for NFL teams this season. You're going to need these guys.
Yeah.
These are guys that, again, they might just be number 42 and 49 on the roster right now, and they aren't going to, have a huge amount of impact in week 1 or something like that. But over the course of a 16-game season, these are two guys that I think would have factored. I think both of them would have made the 53-man roster right away. Milligan would have made it because Julian Blackmon, I expect to start the year on PUP.
Right.
So I think that's where his impact comes. I had Milligan as 4th on the safety depth chart. Malik Hooker, Kari Willis, George Odom, and then Roland Milligan, and then obviously Julian Blackmon once he gets healthy and factors in. So he could have left the 53-man roster, once Blackman got healthy, but I think he would have started the year on it. Marvell Tell, this one stings because, again, from a pure roster depth chart standpoint, probably wasn't going to play a whole lot if everyone is healthy. But one injury, and all of a sudden, he could go from, almost that Quincy Wilson rule, where Quincy Wilson was a healthy scratch, and then if you suffer an injury to an outside corner like Pierre Desir, all of a sudden Quincy Wilson's got to play a ton.
Yep.
That's kind of the role I expected Tell to be in this year of, okay, your outside corners, Rock Yassin, Xavier Rhodes. And then Kenny Moore certainly will play every down like he should. So that's your nickel package, those three guys. Well, if Xavier Rhodes gets hurt or Rock Yassin gets hurt, now Marvell Tell is playing 75% of the game.
Very meaningful minutes.
Huge. So, and then also, I think it just stunts his growth a little bit. This is a guy that's made a position switch that is significant. And he's year 2 in the NFL, and the Colts were encouraged by how he finished off last season. So I think that's where it hurts these guys. And I am not going to get into the debate of why these guys are opting out or I have no freaking idea what their family lives are like. And this kind of goes back to what I said on last week's podcast. These three guys, if they're making this decision, it's significant for their own lives. There's no way. These three guys have not made 30 and 40 million like some of the New England guys that have maybe opted out that you might say, okay, they can afford not to take that risk that maybe some other guys are in the league. So, yeah, I mean, I was, this is not starter 22, any of those guys, but it's notable. And Tell is the most notable name because we have to remember Xavier Rhodes is 30 years old in a contract year. TJ Carey, who you signed, who's thought to be more of a slot, has played some outside, but thought to be more of a slot. He's 30 years old in a contract year. Marvell Tell is the guy that you think about down the road as, okay, 2, 3, 4 years, and now you just wonder, yes, he could come back next year and fine, but you lose some development. And I just think of the NFL, when you are not with a team for a full year, boy, they can lose sight of you pretty quick, and they can forget about you pretty quick. So I think that has to be thought of as well. So I know people are clamoring for, oh my gosh, who are the secondary free agents out there? And I do think the Colts would be wise to go sign somebody. You have to remember is this. These two positions, fourth corner and fourth safety, if that's what you want to call them, they're not starting spots. So if you are, Tremaine Johnson or, Eric Reed or, Clayton Geathers on the open market, some of these, if you're going to want to enter a building, you kind of want to do what Mike Mitchell did a few years ago where you're going to get a ton of playing time right away. Do you really want to come in here and be the fourth corner or the fourth safety? I'm not sure on that. A lot of people talk about Logan Ryan. Again, to me, he's more of that nickel corner. I don't think he's the outside guy, and that's what separates Tell. He's not Isaiah Rodgers, the rookie who's more of a nickel. He's not TJ Carey, so he'll have to be more of a nickel. No, this is a 6'1", long outside corner. You don't have a lot of those guys on your roster. That's what made Quincy Wilson expendable. That's what made Pierre Desir a bit expendable in the Colts' eyes. So I think that is that's something to keep an eye on. But Carey and Rodgers, this helps them and certainly making the roster and getting some playing time. Maybe you see a little bit more base defense. I don't want to get too into the personnel packages. It is something I talked about with Matt Eberflus last week of. You hear those debate about trying to play your best 11. Well, wouldn't that indicate your 3 linebackers as part of your best 11? But then you're losing Kenny Moore out of that nickel, which he's so just solid at. So yeah, notable 3 opt-outs so far for the Colts. Frank Reich said he's optimistic no one else will opt out. We'll see how the final 24 hours go with that.
What else did you take away this afternoon talking to Reich and Rivers? Did we learn anything more about training camp or what's on the horizon for those guys out there?
Yeah, I think going back to what I said earlier about what the layout is of this week, Phillip Rivers is throwing with his wideouts, his tight ends. Coaches are not allowed to watch that. So basically what happens is this. Phillip Rivers comes off the practice field and he immediately goes to Frank Reich's office and tells Frank Reich everything that just happened. Who did I throw to? Who looked good? How were my throws? All those things. Phillip Rivers is Frank Reich's eyes on the practice field.
Another pro to having a veteran quarterback come in.
Without a doubt, especially one that you trust.
Yes.
As much as Frank does with Phillip. So again, starting next week, that is when you will get coaches, players on the field, no full pads, and then starting August 17th, that is when we'll get full padded practices. What else did I learn? Yeah, Phillip Rivers is crazy, sends all these audio messages. Frank Reich reads some of our stuff, which is great. Keep on giving the clicks. Rivers said he had didn't consider opting out at all. Not worried about the 9 kids. Said they're still, I shouldn't say he's not worried about them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He's still up in the air about homeschooling, if he'll do some of them, whatnot. Frank Reich, we talked about it last week, Chris, the question of, who would take over for head coach.
Mm-hmm.
And Frank Reich said that he has met with the coordinators, Sirianni and Eberflus, has contingency plans for every single coach on their staff. So, quality control coach, he goes down for a couple weeks. This is how we'll handle that. But Frank wouldn't reveal who would be the head coach. And he also doesn't want the staff members to know those contingency plans. He just wants Eberflus and Sirianni to know because he doesn't want people think. I mean, can you imagine if you were the quality control coach and all of a sudden you've been bumped up to, okay, you're responsible for third down in the game plan this week.
I need you to focus on what your job is at hand right now.
Right. You don't need them losing sleep overnight over those things, which I actually agree with.
Awesome. Well, Kev, you have an article up on 1075thefan.com right now. If we want to jump into that, talking about some of the players which Colts have to most prove in 2020.
And one thing, Chris, before we get into this list, it'll be a top 5 list. Think of the most to prove in regards to this football team in 2020.
Right.
You have the easy opt-outs of all these guys on their rookie contracts, the Quincy Wilsons of last year. So, you won't see Kamoko Ture. You won't see Tyquan Lewis. You won't see Reese Fountain on this list. All 3 of those guys have a lot to prove for many reasons. But I'm talking and Ture certainly could factor into this list. But I think when you see the names, you'll realize why these 5 are on the list.
Yeah, that's a great way to preface it because if you didn't have that background, the first name on your list is DeForest Buckner, which would have caught people off guard, but you phrasing it like that makes total sense.
Yeah, because, this is the most important position on this defense. I think I was listening to Chris Ballard on with Colin Cowherd yesterday, and he mentioned how without Patrick Mahomes' fourth quarter heroics in the Super Bowl, the MVP would have been DeForest Buckner. Now, obviously, that wouldn't have happened because no one votes for defensive tackle for Super Bowl MVP. But I get what Chris is saying.
Mm-hmm.
That dude impacted the game a whole lot.
Yes, he did.
So it goes back to what I've said all along. The Colts traded away the 13th overall pick and then paid this dude nearly $100 million over 5 years. That is, you talk about valuable resources. Chris Ballard doesn't want to trade a draft pick for anything. And he traded the 13th overall draft pick. So what DeForest Buckner's got to prove is I'm worthy of that. Think about the guys traded for first-round picks in years past. Minka Fitzpatrick, Khalil Mack, homeboy who runs his mouth, Jalen Ramsey. These are studs. That is the upper echelon of, I guess, all defensive players in the NFL. But, holy shit. Those are some damn good football players. And DeForest Buckner has been like that, and now it's just stringing that together for several years and then doing it without Nick Bosa and Eric Armstead flanking you, which, to be fair to Buckner, he produced without Nick Bosa in 2018 at a really high level and still produced at a very notable level last year. But it's different.
It is.
And so I think that's why I put him atop this list.
We need you to be more of those first 3 guys you mentioned and not Trent Richardson.
Yeah. Oh, yes. Wow. Jeez. Yeah, that was harsh. But yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with that and talking about giving up first-round picks. And I also think this, Chris, when we talk about the best interior defensive lineman in the league, it's Aaron Donald, it's Chris Jones, it's Cameron Hayward, Fletcher Cox. We don't talk maybe about Geno Atkins in that realm as much anymore.
Yes.
We don't talk about Jarrell Casey as much in that realm. Like DeForest Buckner, he can't be in that Jarrell Casey, he can't be like, oh, that's he can't have the type of season Justin Houston just had last year. No. He's got to go a step above that. Like, that is the message you sent to him and your entire football team when you said, there's the 13th overall pick and there's $100 million. And I get it. I understand it. But what comes of that is the necessary return that you need. And that'll be what Buckner's got to prove this year.
We talked about 2 guys opting out on the back end of the defense. Second on your list is Malik Hooker.
And what you'll notice here, Chris, is we're going to get a run on guys in contract years. There's so many notable free agents on this football team. And Malik Hooker is, has probably been the most talked about of the free agents this offseason with what the Colts did. Not picking up his 5th-year option, drafting Julian Blackmon, 85th overall. And I don't think this is necessarily a prove-it season for Buckner in regards to the Colts. I mean, to be frank, the Colts have already told him through their actions what they think of him.
Correct.
They don't think he is a definite foundational piece moving forward. They have questions about that. So this is more of Hooker. Like, yes, he's got to prove it to this football team because he's interviewing through 16 games with 31 other NFL teams. But it's more so that. It's more so Hooker proving to the rest of the league where I'm at in regards to being a former, 15th overall pick.
Yep.
Now, he still matters a whole lot to the Colts because he's going to start, and safety depth going back to Tell and Milligan for just a second, we had questions about the safety corner. We had questions about the secondary group before this news. This just kind of makes, reemphasizes that point a little bit more. So, yes, this is just a massive prove-it season for Malik Hooker. In the mirror sort of wake-up call, all of those things. Normally, these guys, to me, wouldn't necessarily qualify on this list. But without a doubt, for the Colts to be a good football team and an improved defense, they need more consistent play from number 29.
Number 3 on your list is the man under center, Phillip Rivers.
Yeah, old Phil, 1 year, $25 million. That would mean prove it. And I go back to something that I've made a point of this offseason several times now. The Chargers said no to Phillip Rivers without a definite long-term franchise answer in waiting.
Mm-hmm.
This was not Alex Smith to Patrick Mahomes. This was, we got Tyrod Taylor, and with that 6th overall pick, hopefully we'll get a quarterback. It wasn't this seamless of, dude, you're 38 and we've been planning for this for 2 or 3 seasons. Like, we already have this young quarterback that's going to take over. And Rivers has acknowledged it. There's been skeptics. We saw the season that he had last year. So this is a major prove-it season for himself and then also for the Colts that they made the right decision and that there are several elements to the quarterback position that Phillip Rivers brings that Jacoby Brissett did not bring. So, inevitably, I would say every quarterback is on this list. I think last year I put Luck on this list of it's prove it to the point of let's go. You just were comeback player of the year. It's time to be, all right, I was the number 1 overall pick. I was a generational talent.
Yep.
It's time to be MVP word. That was my expectation for Andrew Luck last year. So that, Rivers to me doesn't fall obviously on that level, but on a level of, upper echelon quarterback, top 15 quarterback in this league, yeah, that's where he falls in my eyes.
The guy we hope has great chemistry with Phillip Rivers and makes a lot of catches for him this year's 4th on your list, and that's T.Y. Hilton.
Chris, we've talked about proving it on, I think, 2 different occasions for Hilton. One is health.
Yep.
And we'll get into that a little bit in Twitter questions. I'll kind of put that on the back burner. But the second that I've talked about is proving it without Andrew Luck. And to be fair to Hilton, the quarterbacks have had a pretty steep drop-off from Andrew Luck. But the numbers are the numbers. And he has not been a bona fide top 10 wideout in this league without number 12 under center. So that's where kind of some of the prove-it stuff comes into play. He's still the most proven pass catcher on this football team. And the Colts need it. I think we had a question this week. Someone, talked about, am I a little worried about the wideout depth? It's a lot of Michael Pittman instantly produce. Paris Campbell somewhat instantly produce. It's like, yeah, that's fair. So there's still a pretty big burden on Hilton. I think whenever you reach the age of 30, whenever you've had a couple injuries flare up, and you're in a contract year, there's a level of proving it of, what is T.Y. Hilton going to be in his 30s?
Yeah.
Is he going to be Larry Fitzgerald? Is he going to have a Reggie Wayne run early in his 30s? I mean, if I'm not mistaken, Reggie had I think in 2012, he had a tremendous season that first year with Luck.
He did.
And that was into his 30s. So it's just, what are you going to be that guy that tapers off? And unfortunately, it happens, especially to those sorts of positions and Hilton's body type. So that's why he's on this prove it list for me.
Number 5, a newcomer to the team, Xavier Rhodes.
Chris, this is kind of the ultimate prove it. A team that drafted you in the first round, had just signed you to a huge deal a couple of off seasons before. They say sayonara. Boom. Here comes Xavier Rhodes. I mean, he had to take a major pay cut to join the Colts. That's a wake-up call. Similar to Rivers in a way. This team, this franchise that always believed in you, has said no to you. How do you respond to that? It's your first time going through this. So I think all those reasons are why Rhodes means so much, and the Marvell Tell news only strengthens this of like, boy, they need Xavier Rhodes. I mean, if Xavier Rhodes struggles like he did last season, boy, when the Colts go nickel, it's going to be a, oh my, it's, and you're pushing all your chips into Rock Ya-Sin. I mean, Rock Ya-Sin and Xavier Rhodes with today's news with Marvell Tell, where you would rank them on their most indispensable list on this football team, they just skyrocketed up that.
Absolutely.
Skyrocketed up.
Yeah.
And I go back to their body types. The long outside corner that if you get in a pinch and you feel like you need someone to follow an opposing wideout around, boom. Those are the guys. So huge. I think Rhodes very deservedly needs to be on this list. So he's on it.
I'm sure our listeners are sitting there tossing around a couple other names that they thought could have possibly been on this list.
Oh,
are there
Who you
some?
got?
No, I'm just saying, are there some for you that you think people might be talking about? Lewis, Teray, as you mentioned, Reese Fountain.
Yeah, Teray would be out of those three. Would be the most impactful considering what he means to this football team as that edge rusher. But outside of that, I'm like, Kenny Moore's proven himself.
Mm-hmm.
Darius Leonard has proven himself. Quentin Nelson, Costanzo, Braden Smith, Ryan Kelly. Last year, Ryan Kelly was on this list. He needed to stay healthy. And boom, he did that.
Yep.
And I think he'll be rewarded with the contract extension. So, maybe Trey Burton staying healthy. Jack Doyle, I mean, it defines consistency, defines reliability. Marlon Mack, I don't think he needs to prove anything. Like, Marlon Mack's been a really good football player. So, no, honestly, no one else stood out to me. This was a much easier list in my mind. Some people might disagree with this. In my mind, to kind of cut off outside of Teray than it was to do most indispensable. That was the list of where I didn't have Nelson top 5. I didn't have Hilton. I think it was Hilton. Hilton and Kenny Moore, I think, were the other two that I didn't have on that top 5 list. And you could make compelling arguments for those three to be on that. With this one, I don't know. I'm curious to see if there is any pushback on it. But outside of Teray, yeah, to me, it's like, it's not so much what Marlon Mack can do this year. It's not so much what Anthony Walker can do this year. It's more of like, what will Bobby Okereke do? What will Jonathan Taylor do to influence the Colts' willingness to say, wow, we really need those guys to come back to our football team?
Ready to jump into some Twitter questions?
Yeah, man. I'll tell you what, this is a long list. So, let's.
It is, and it's fun because we still have some of the fun ones in there, like the hypotheticals, but now that we are in training camp, it's awesome to see it shift towards the actual play on the field.
Chris Presley, 1 month from today. Roster cuts.
Yeah.
Folks, it is you aren't going to get doom and gloom from Kevin Bowen on this podcast. I'll get into it, but I'm optimistic about the NFL, and I didn't think I would say that, a couple weeks ago or even a month ago.
Well, let's kick it off with Anton. How crazy is it? A future with a backfield looking like Taylor, Hines, and Wilkins.
Well, I don't think it's that crazy at all. But when you say the word future, I'm like, that might just be for 2021. You know, running back, I'm sorry. I can't go with a group and be like, boom, they're your 3 running backs for the next 4 years. Unfortunately, that's just not life. There's a lot of pressure on Jordan Wilkins. We had a couple questions about him this week. You know, I think we also need to remember Jordan Wilkins is a little bit on the older end for a rookie contract running back. I think he's 2 full years older than Marlon Mack and came out a year after Marlon Mack. So, you know, when you think about running backs and contracts and numbers, and yes, there's not the wear and tear, but like there's a little bit on that. If this is the group next year, Taylor, Hines, Wilkins, and Marlon Mack walks in free agency, I get to day 3 of the draft, I'm still taking a running back.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm taking one that can help me out on first and second down because, you know, God forbid an injury to Jonathan Taylor. Hello? I mean, you're really scrambling there.
This is a league anymore. It doesn't surprise me if you take a running back
every year.
Every year.
Do it. I mean, I have preached that endlessly, and that's why I won't rip the Jonathan Taylor draft pick like as much as some will. I'm not. I get it. It's the position that has the most attrition in the NFL. It's not a freaking kicker.
Yeah.
You know? So, have at it.
Derek Schultz with a question this week.
How about that? I did see that. That's my guy, Derek Schultz. Usually keeping us updated on the old Midtown happenings.
Oh, yeah.
Around there. So, I was good to see him hop into the Twitter questions.
Another Hoosier with you. How many receivers do you think they'll end up keeping, and who will be the 1 or 2 on the cut line?
So this is where I'm at with this, Derek. It's you have the big 4. Hilton, Pittman, Campbell, Pascal. Write those down in Sharpie. Those are definites. So I go to 5 and 6. Let me start here. I lean towards them keeping 6. Now, with Roosevelt Nix in the mix, that's an extra roster spot, assuming he makes the football team.
Correct.
Which, again, not to get too deep into it, but Marvell Tell and Roland Milligan did play special team snaps for you that are notable. Nix is known for kind of his special teams ability, even though those are much different body types. So I'm taking away a tight end. And for now, I'm taking away a running back. I'd probably only keep 3 running backs. Now, that might change over the course of these next few weeks, but basically what I'm looking at is last year, I want to say the Colts kept 4 running backs, 6 wideouts, and 4 tight ends. So that adds up to 14 non-quarterback, non-offensive linemen on offense. This year, I'm thinking 3 running backs, 1 fullback, 6 wideouts, 3 tight ends. So I'm a number short than I was last year, and I'll make up for that, you know, probably on the offensive line, to be honest with you. But so that's why I think you have room for 6. I think, again, number short at tight end, and then number short at running back, and you're only adding a fullback. As far as the last 2, if I'm making a 53-man roster tomorrow, this will piss off some people, but I'm keeping Marcus Johnson. I'm keeping Ashton Doolin. I think I can get Reese Fountain and Desmond Patman to my practice squad, and that's what I would do. The reason is this. What guys are going to help me win in week 1?
Mm-hmm.
Ashton Doolin was a great special teams player for this team last year. You've lost some special teams guys, so I'm going to put him on there. And then as far as Marcus Johnson, he's proven it in a NFL setting to where I think if I exposed him to waivers, someone might nab him. We've gone over Reese Fountain's 7 snaps in the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
You know, 6 kneel downs.
Yeah.
And a drop touchdown against Kansas City. There's just a level of, and maybe it'll get into like a weird game of who you want to protect on your 53 versus who you don't. But, and you very well could need Fountain or Patman at some point this season. But I look at it as those 4 guys for 2 spots, and I'm going to keep the guys that I trust a little bit more.
Going back to your thoughts about Nick, Zach's question is about that exactly. He believes that a versatile fullback like Kyle Juszczyk is what teams might look for to get an edge on offense. While he does like having a fullback, he feels like 5'11", 250 pounds isn't beating one on a route and tips your hands that we're running similar to what Ebron did in the pass play last year. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, no, it's a great point, Zach. Terrific question. You know, I remember when Grigson signed Stanley Havili in 2013, and maybe because Stanley Havili just as a part of every USC player over the 2000s, just absolutely dominated my Irish. But I kind of like that. I was like, oh, here's this 235-pound fullback who can throw his head in there, but can be an in-line guy or can go out on a pass route and catch the football. And, homeboy Rosie Nix, I don't have it in front of me, but I want to say I remember when the article that I wrote on him back in the spring, I think he averages a catch every 5th game. So, defensive coordinators aren't losing sleep over Roosevelt Nix in terms of a pass catcher. So basically, I do think what Zach is throwing out there as a fullback, that to me is more intriguing. That's why I like Trey Burton. I think Trey Burton is a more versatile tight end than Eric Ebron was. Is Ebron a better pass catcher? And is Ebron 6'5" and 250? Yes. Is Trey Burton different at 6'2" and 235? Certainly. But I like Trey Burton because when he's in my huddle, I'm not tipping my hand as much as I was with Eric Ebron or I am with Roosevelt Nix. So I like versatility more. But that's why I'm also curious about Nix, just to see exactly what he does. Reich says, 10 to 15% of the snaps. And I don't know, does he have a resurgence? I mean, Ryan Hewitt, who this football team had, who was a tight end and was an H-back for them in 2018, he was targeted once, I think all year, maybe twice. Now, he did score a touchdown. So, I'm sure in week 8, when Roosevelt Nix hasn't caught a ball all year, he'll, score on 4th and 1 with a catch in the flat like Dan Klecko, and people will, people will go crazy. But if I'm going to pick a body type of fullback, I love the headbangers. I love them. I probably like versatility a little bit more. And I hate saying that because my favorite athlete every year is Navy's fullback. I don't care who it is, but whoever is the fullback in Navy, you're my favorite player, and you rush for 50 yards in the first quarter against Notre Dame, and I still have a smile on my face because, God bless it, that's awesome to see.
And speaking to Zach's point about tipping the hand, I was trying to find it and I couldn't, but I believe Roosevelt Nix even tweeted during this offseason, everyone who runs behind me has made the Pro Bowl. He knows that he's the blocking fullback.
Oh, yeah, he knows. This dude played defensive tackle in college.
Yeah.
He had to drop some weight coming from Kent State. So, Roosevelt Nix is, he's your headbanger.
Question from Lawrence this week. What do you believe the number would be for the Colts to retain Marlon Mack? And do you believe it would be worth it to keep him and Taylor together for a few more years?
Lawrence, I'm going to say this a lot, and I probably have said this a lot already, whenever we get questions about Mack and Hooker. And I think what we have to remember here, and I do this too often, and I know fans do this too often because I do it when I'm so invested into specific teams. Free agency is a two-way street. So does Marlon Mack want to come back?
Yeah.
Great offensive line. But I only get the chance to cash in once as a running back. And if I'm not going to be the lead back here, that might influence my decision. So that's the first thing to keep in mind. Now, this is a tough question specifically because what will the cap implications look like? Are you handing another $25 million to Phillip Rivers? Obviously, what does extensions look like for Leonard? What is is Braden Smith going to get a contract extension next offseason? So, $5 to $6 million. That's a number I would throw around, and I would have interest in bringing him back. Mm-hmm. But I'd really have to look at the books and say, does an extra $5 million mean more for a corner, for a wideout, for a tight end, as Jack Doyle and Trey Burton reach the age of 30 and get north of that? Those are the questions. I'd have to be very honest. But every time I see questions like this, Lawrence, I'm thinking to myself, if Jonathan Taylor goes down, you're unscrambled. It's such a tough dilemma because I think running backs, in a way, I understand why they are devalued. Mm-hmm. Jonathan Williams comes off the bench and has 100-yard games back-to-back last year. What?
Right.
But then I look at the Colts record without Marlon Mack, and I'm like, holy shit. He matters. So it's tough. I would say right around $5 or $6 million would have me interested.
All right, Michael has one that's probably going to make us cringe here for a second.
Oh, God.
Lining up for a game-winning 45-yard field goal.
45?
45 yards.
Okay.
Who would you rather have as your kicker? Adam Vinatieri of last season or 2005 Mike Vanderjagt?
Oh, my God. So I'm getting Vanderjagt 2005
Yes.
or Vinatieri.
Well, I guess technically he says 2020 Adam Vinatieri, so does that mean
So he's healthy?
this up? Yeah.
I'm going Vanderjagt. I mean, Vanderjagt kicked the ball really well. ... Until Joey Molinaro's Pittsburgh Steelers, took the knife out of Nick Harper's cabinet and just.
Oh.
Yeah.
And you might be able to miss that kick, but you can't miss that kick and piss off the quarterback.
No. Yeah, and I mean, obviously an epic clip from Peyton at the Pro Bowl. And that was the shank of all shanks. I mean, Vinny had a couple last year though that were like, oh my gosh, is that my mom teeing off on the driving range? Like, it's just. I mean, wasn't Vanderjagt like the most accurate NFL kicker at one point?
Probably. I don't know that answer, but
because all you remember is
yes.
Pittsburgh. Yeah, Vanderjagt 2005. I'm sorry. Yeah, maybe we'll just go for
it. Insane Fisherman. Do you really think they'll play this season? If so, how many games before it is shut down?
Sure. Yeah. Okay. I'm optimistic, and I'm optimistic with some factual stuff to back it up, okay? There's no bubble. We've talked about that. It's impossible to do a bubble. I'll argue that with anybody. So right now we're a week into it. I think the numbers I've seen so far is I believe 3.5% have tested positive around the NFL.
Okay.
That number is a far cry from what our current national average is, certainly here in our own state and in our own county. And to me, Chris, this was the week I was most worried about. The first week back.
Correct.
All these guys have been in New York and L.A. and probably not so much New York, L.A. and Miami and Atlanta and Dallas and Houston, like wherever they train in the offseason, hot spots, big cities. And now they've come back to their respective NFL homes. And, 3.5% of players have tested positive. Like, that's pretty good because now we're starting to create more of a bubble than they were in.
Correct.
And we're starting to take much more of the precautions. And I when I say we, I mean the entire NFL.
Mm-hmm.
So, I have some faith. You can call me crazy and maybe I'll get, burned by it, but the testing to me has been very aggressive. It might be too accurate or, too over the top in terms of what we saw with Matthew Stafford, but that's for another day. You'd rather have that than the other. So, people are like, well, and I've said this, they're slobbering on each other during plays and whatnot. What you're doing, though, by this is this. The NBA, they are sweating on each other. But where you have the advantage is these guys just tested negative. So they can sweat on each other. They're just sweating on each other, which is gross and whatever. It's sports and we all love it. And, we shower after games. And the NFL, yes, they're going to slobber and sweat on each other, but seemingly they will have just tested negative.
Yeah.
So that's the reason why they will have been able to do that, if that makes sense. So I think the NFL is learning. I said it last week, what's happening to the Marlins, it happened to the Marlins, and what's happened to Lou Williams, like that's the best thing for the NFL. It's these just extreme wake-up calls that have been drilled into these players' minds, and they know if they screw up, it's going to impact the entire league. So, I mean, the odds are probably not great on the season finishing, and I'm not saying go to Vegas, but I am somewhat optimistic. They don't travel anywhere near as much as Major League Baseball. Like, that's a point I feel like we got to keep on stressing of these guys are still in their own cities. And until we see an outbreak of 10 guys on a team, I think the NFL is going to keep on going. So, yeah, I think they will play a season. I don't know how many games you're going to get in. Maybe it's no fans at all. But I think as long as we're not to like 10, 15 people on a roster or you're eliminating an entire position group, I think we're going to give it a go, man.
Jordan wants to know, do you think the Colts need to make some sort of move for another receiver because he's still worried about Hilton and our receiver depth and the fact that there are a lot of unproven guys, in his opinion, at the top of the depth chart?
This is the question I was talking about earlier. Yeah, Jordan, it might be one of the more unproven position groups on the roster. Seriously. I mean, your number 2 and 3 guys on your proverbial depth chart have played 7 games in the NFL combined. So it's a fair question, and then you look at the free agent, wideout list, Chris, and it's like Chester Rogers, Ryan Grant. I saw the Jets just released Quincy Enunwa. Like, where is he at? Jordan Matthews always seems to be a free agent in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Jermaine Kearse, it's like there are names, but until there's like an injury and until the Colts feel like those guys aren't able to prove themselves, I think they're going to roll with what they got.
Matt wants to know if you've heard of what kind of access you're going to get during training camp, or have there been any specifics other than Ballard assuring that he's going to take care of you guys?
Yeah, Matt. Basically, what it is this. Monday, we had Leonard and Costanzo on Zoom calls. Today, we had Reich and Rivers. Friday, we'll have Nelson and somebody, maybe Buckner. So that's how it is right now. You get player availability 3 days a week. You get the head coach 1 day a week. I believe that will be the same for next week. And then once you get into full padded practices, the coach will be available on a much more frequent basis, I guess. 3 out of 4 days, something like that. And then we get to go to practice. I think I've touched on this. Maybe I haven't. There's like 8 or 9 of us, I think, in the media that is able to watch every practice, mask on, from an end zone for outdoor practices. I think when they go indoors, they might just open up the garages and we kind of like the garage doors on the side of the building and we watch like from that area.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, rocking masks the whole time, and we're there. I don't think we have to be tested. I know there was some thought of that, questions of that. And then media availability will continue to be Zoom. It's not like we're going to be, even 6 feet away from Frank Reich asking questions. I think it'll be like, no, you go off-site, you go home, you go to wherever, and that'll be Zoom. But we will be able to watch training camp practices. I know there are some restrictions on what we can report on at those practices, so we'll see how that goes. But, yeah, that's how the rest of the month looks like.
The question from Raj this week is going to be tailored a little bit based on the information that we learned this afternoon from Frank Reich, but his question is, are there any realistic options to bolster our secondary? With Blackman hurt and questionable for the season, are Willis, Hooker, and Odom enough for both safety positions? He goes on to add, if Rhodes doesn't pull a rabbit out of the hat, is it realistic to have Tell and Rock on the outside corners?
Raj obviously sent this in before today's news, but, this lays it out, Chris. This was a question, a concern before today, and now you're eliminating Tell, and you're eliminating that next name you would have mentioned at safety with Julian Blackman, getting back from that ACL. Because you got to think about sub-packages. Right now, if you're going to go play tomorrow, your dime package to me, 6 defensive backs, Kenny Moore, Xavier Rhodes, Rock Yassin, and then Kari Willis, Malik Hooker, and George Odom.
Okay.
So, but then, who's the next guy up?
Yeah.
That's where you're getting into TJ Carey, Isaiah Rodgers. Your fourth safety right now healthy would probably be Donald Rutledge, who's an undrafted free agent. That's what you're getting into right now. So, like I said earlier, Rodgers and Carey benefit big time. We've talked about Carey on prior podcasts. He started a whole lot in the NFL. He really struggled in coverage last year. The Cleveland Browns decided to cut him. So, okay. But there's versatility. I think there's a Mike Mitchell element to him, from a leadership standpoint. But I guess speaking of Mitchell, that's what you get into. Mitchell wanted to wait to find an opportunity a couple of years ago. I think that's what these guys on the open market will want. I'm not just going to go to camp to try and be the fourth safety. That's for the undrafted guys to try and figure out. And who knows, Shaq Taylor at this point last year was a guy we never even talked about.
Yep.
Week 5, he's playing big-time snaps against the Chiefs. So do we have some of those guys? I know there's several, Travis Reed and They cut the artist, Picasso something or other. Jackson Porter is a corner that's on the COVID list right now. When he comes off, like those are some of the names. It's like, okay, these guys now become not just double numbers on your roster sheet. So yeah, Raj, we'll see how all that plays out.
Going to change the pace here a little bit with the question from Matt. Switching over to baseball slightly. The Reds wise up and decide to rebuild their bullpen. Which current Colt are you picking to be the closer?
They need to do that.
QB's excluded. Can't think of anything too football related right now. Enjoying the Pacers dominating the bubble, and the Reds are letting him down late in games per usual.
How about the freaking Pacers? How about TJ Warren?
Whew.
I mean, it's one of the greatest 3-game stretches I've seen in really any sport. And I don't think that's hyperbole at all. I mean, I believe he tied Jermaine O'Neal,
yep.
right?
Mm-hmm.
For the most points in a 3-game stretch in franchise history. Like, people were supposed to come to the bubble and be rusty. TJ Warren's come to the bubble and said, F that rust, I'm ascending.
He loves it, yeah.
As a player. So, unbelievable for TJ Warren right now, and certainly looking forward to next week when it's, or even Saturday. Lakers play the Rockets next week, play the Heat twice.
Well, his next game's against the Suns, who traded him for cash considerations.
You know full well he's got that one circled on it. So, okay, closer.
Yes.
Quarterbacks excluded. Man, that's a good one. Maybe this is like 6th grade me talking here, but I was always just the most intimidated by just big freaking dudes on the mound. I stopped playing baseball in 6th grade. That's when I started playing golf more. And I'll never forget being hit by Eddie Hamilton, who hit puberty just earlier than all of us, and just crying like a freaking baby. So, I mean, you throw Braden Smith on the mound, 6'5", 300, big old polar bear out there. Grover Stewart. Looking like CC Sabathia out there. Yeah, like those are the guys that I'm kind of like, could they be a dominant, throwing 101 coming out of the pen? So yeah, but one of those 2 names.
Okay.
Throw them in there. God, and the Reds need it, man.
Yeah, they do. Greetings from Costa Rica this week, as Blopa has a question for the podcast.
Blopa, I love it. I was talking to my father-in-law about Costa Rica the other day.
Yeah,
it's a great place to fish.
You gonna get down there?
No. I can't say I'm gonna get down there anytime soon. But yeah, he was telling me how he took a fishing trip down there.
That's sweet. So there are some free agents that makes him think these guys make a lot of sense to the team, and he's the missing piece. No.
I would say the one that comes to mind is probably the biggest name out there, and that's Jadeveon Clowney.
Mm-hmm.
But, you look at the free agent list right now, and it's just kind of like, are they just guys? Are they just kind of Jags, just a guy? They're just kind of, we'll see what happens. And so, yeah, I think it'll be something that, Clowney's probably the biggest name, but really no one else. I mean, I've said it for quite a while. Offensive line depth is still at the forefront of my mind, but, that would be really it, to be honest with you. It's just the guys you pick up in August are probably on the street for a reason. This year a little bit different because of the medicals, but that would be easily the biggest name.
Do you see an internal bubble restriction implementing by the team to reduce an outbreak chance? Obviously, teams that have as close to 100% of their roster are at a huge advantage. That is from Matt.
Internally, I think contact tracers, Frank Reich showed us the chip.
Yeah, those look cool.
Yeah, that he wears and all these guys wear, that basically you get within 6 feet of somebody and it beeps. That's smart. That seems wise to me. One-way traffic in hallways, meeting rooms are spaced out. All the meals are to go. I think that was something that I mentioned last week. So I think those are like the big things. From, again, internal bubble. I still go back to, I don't know why these guys aren't in hotels. That would make a whole lot of sense to me. But, yeah, that's really the only kind of negative that I look on the NFL that's a bit of a head-scratcher. You're in hotels normally for training camp. Why aren't you in them right now? But I think that they're taking a lot of good steps. Like, this is very difficult to pull off. Very difficult to pull off. but I see like evidence of like, okay, that makes sense. That makes sense. Now everybody just behave. And if you behave, hopefully you can pull it off. I know great behavior is not going to, who knows? If your nanny has it and the kids get it and then boom, boom, yes, all those things can happen, but I think there's reason to have optimism. And I'm not a person that just blows fluff just to blow it. I actually somewhat believe in this.
Colin has a quarterback question this week. He says, we've learned that Brissett isn't the answer, and we're going to learn that if Rivers can be a 2-year answer. As we learn, Colts likely win enough to take them out of the top 15 picks. So what is most likely? The Colts' next quarterback comes from the draft, the Colts' next quarterback comes from free agency, or the Colts' next quarterback is Jacob Eason?
Yeah, really good question. I still think it's the draft, and obviously by that, you're going to have to mortgage a good amount of resources to find that quarterback. I don't think you stand pat at 26 or wherever the Colts might draft in 2021, and hope that guy falls to you. Aggression, that'll be the name of the game. Houston did it with Watson. Kansas City did it with one Patrick Mahomes. Move up, folks. It's just, I think back to that crazy story that Jordan Spieth and Ryan Palmer, 2 golfers, were in the Saints draft room, and said the Saints were getting ready to take Mahomes, and all of a sudden Kansas City comes flying up to take him, and the Saints take Marshawn Lattimore, which turned out to be a very good player, but still, that's just craziness of the draft. But I think you got to go find it. I think that's where you do it. I think I've talked about building around the rookie contract.
Yep.
I think that's very important for the quarterback position as well. That leaves me the best case scenario for long-term sustainable success is drafting a guy early. Does it hurt you and limit the flexibility you have in maybe the 2022 draft and potentially the 2023 draft? Sure. But that dude touches the football every single play. It means that much. If it's Justin Fields, if it's Trey Lance, if it's whoever, Trevor Lawrence, it's going to take a lot to move up, but I think you got to do it. And I think there's a willingness. I think Irsay gets that. I think Ballard gets that. And if their roster is as stable and in place as it is at other spots, pull off the deal that will shake up your franchise.
A question from Josh that will have us switching paces a little bit as well, but a fun one. If the Pacers were to suddenly all contract COVID, that part's not fun, and could only replace the roster with current Colts, who would be the starting 5 and at what positions?
Jeez, Josh. Man. Well, this is a popular, I always tell people, the most popular debates you get in NFL locker rooms is people debating about who was the best basketball player in high school and who's better, LeBron or Jordan. So I've heard a lot of chatter about this, and I'm going with the point guard. I think would just be an unbelievable defender full court, and that's Kenny Moore.
Yep. Okay.
My shooting guard is T.Y. We're a little small in the backcourt, but I need some offense. And from what I hear, T.Y.'s got a good stroke. This guy was rumored to have some D1 offers in Western PA coming out, and he'll be my 3-man. That's Malik Hooker.
Yes. Yeah.
In any NFL locker room, you're probably going to be a little undersized in the front court, which is fine. Look what small ball's doing for the Pacers. It's working on the offensive end. I don't know if this guy can shoot, but I know he's going to give me energy, and I know he's going to give me a lot of rebounds, and that's Darius Leonard.
Okay.
And he's going to be my 4. We're going to be undersized, but Leonard plays bigger than that frame. And my 5 is obvious, the guy that played Division I basketball and was on an NCAA tournament team, and that's Mo Alley Cox. Played at VC. Hell, Mo Alley Cox is better than TJ Leaf right now. I'd rather have Mo Alley Cox than TJ Leaf. TJ Leaf came in an open 3.
You're not wrong at all. And
which is sad.
Way better hair, too. I mean,
yeah, come on. Yeah. Although I don't know what TJ's trying to that hair. But, yeah, that would be my 5. Again, we're a little small, but we're going to run.
Have you seen the high school highlights of Big Q playing?
I know. That was tempting. But, am I going to put Nelson at the 4? I guess I could put him at the 5 and be undersized, but that's a little bit. I mean, I'm thinking with Leonard, I can switch a lot on the defensive end of the floor.
Okay.
You know, Nelson would be my goon off the bench. I need 5 fouls, and I need. Yeah, I kind of forgot about that video.
That's true, though. I guess I gotta put it in the context of the question. This isn't a pickup game. We're replacing the Pacers. So what 5 can get up and down the court against an NBA team?
Yeah, he wants a starting 5.
All right, awesome. Question from Joseph this week. If we have another injury-riddled season, do you think the medical staff and the strength and conditioning program should be overhauled? And how much of the strength and conditioning is controlled or monitored by the team versus the players being on their own?
Yeah, it's a great question, Joseph. You know, certainly the players are outside of the building for so much of the offseason. Honestly, I think you'll just have a COVID excuse this year with injuries. You know, I think it'll be very tough to, quantify. Well, that's the exact reason why we have 5 hamstring injuries, soft tissue stuff. I think Chris Ballard's a firm believer in the strength conditioning program, how it's been revamped, the nutritional staff, it's also been revamped, and I've said it before, the only part of the 3 kind of pronged approach to this that's still in place is the medical staff. And clearly, their head trainer, Dave Hammer, is now their infectious control officer. So he obviously means a lot to Chris Ballard. So I don't think we'll see any massive changes. Does this need to be looked into 130%? And I believe they've looked into it. I'm sorry I don't have great answers on this. This is a very difficult thing for me to pinpoint. But if you continually rank in the bottom 5 or 10 in the NFL in games missed, holy hell, how do you not make a change?
And Joseph did have a question on the last pod. He said, "Go Dogs," and wanted us to know, yes, that was in fact for Georgia.
Georgia. Go Dogs. DAWGS there.
Joseph knows all about Eason.
Oh, yeah, he does. Yeah, good call there. God, Georgia, man. Notre Dame. We should have won that game last year.
IU fan in Texas. Will any of the bottom 10 of the 53-man roster have a breakout season? And if so, who do you predict having that type of season? Might suggest Pascal had that last year.
Yeah, that's fair. Pascal for sure. Boy, this is tough. I mean, this is when people want me to predict. Although I will say, and I hope some of you made money off that, I did say draft Michael Pittman, take that in FanDuel, and he was the 34th overall pick. It's tough. You know, I thought about Marvell Tell before today. It will take an injury for this to happen. Like Pascal, why was he up there? Well, Funchess separates his collarbone, and Deion Kane doesn't work out, and Hilton gets banged up. It's going to take an injury. So predicting injuries is tough. I come back to one of those defensive ends. There's so many of them. Muhammad, Banogu, Toure, Lewis, somebody, you know. And I really would have liked to have said Marvell Tell before today.
Yeah. Cody has a question regarding the preseason being gone. The normal hype around potential future quarterbacks like Eason won't get as much opportunity to blossom.
Oh, it's such a blow.
When do you think we see Eason throw a football for the first time in a game? And is over and under, he said, at 34.5.
God, I love these questions. I love them. We're going to do a virtual Beers with Bowen here in about a month. We're going to do a slide of over-unders because I just love them so much. So, Cody, thank you for that. Having said that, 34.5, I am betting the mortgage on the under. I mean, 34.5, he's given me 2 years and 2 games.
Yes.
Of football. I mean, he's going to be the backup next year, wouldn't you think?
Yeah.
I mean, unless you do something crazy and draft a quarterback early in round 1 or and even then he might be your backup. Rivers might retire and that first round pick might be your starter, and then Eason could be your backup. I mean, we are 1 COVID test positive for Jacoby Brissett or Phillip Rivers away from Jacob Eason being 1 play away from throwing a pass.
True.
So, yeah, 34.5 games is a lot. That'd be a long bet to wait on. It's about as long as the bet that I've made. I had my buddies, and I take full responsibility for this. I said over and under the Wizards would win 1.5 games in the bubble, and they can't beat the bleeping Mad Ants. They couldn't even beat Brooklyn. Brooklyn's the one team you're supposed to beat, although
the
Bucks didn't beat them. I'm praying for team. The bubble's weird. Teams will rest. I believe in the Wizards, even though their roster is LOL. TJ Leaf wants minutes. He should go to the
I can
Wizards.
tell you're still holding out hope for that. But
Yeah, I am. I got 5 games. I think I got one starting here in a few minutes. Hey, you stand by your losses. You stand by your wins. You got to be confident. Yes, under. It's one pass.
right.
You think over?
No, I'm agreeing with you on the under. I'm agreeing with you. All right. From Casey, would you rather have prime Devin Funches, which isn't saying much, or rookie Michael Pittman Jr.?
I mean, shit, you just took the words right out of my mouth. Was there ever a prime Devin Funches?
Didn't he have like 9 touchdowns the one year with Cam? But it's still, I think it was 9. It was something.
I want to say he had like 1 year over 500 yards, 550, yards, like something like that. So yeah, I mean Pittman. Yeah, I mean trust the development, believe in it. No questions asked.
Scott wants to know, in a one-season scenario, who is the one player in the NFL, non-quarterback, who you would take to give your team the best chance at winning a Super Bowl?
Ooh, Scotty Schmelzer. This is good. This is a good one. This season, non-QB.
Non-quarterback, one player.
Okay, 2 come to mind immediately.
Okay.
One plays corner, one's a defensive tackle. Any guesses?
So I'm guessing you're going to go Donald. And
Yeah.
a corner, blanking. I'm trying to think the best corner in the league right now.
Yeah, I mean, he's emerged, and that would be Stephon Gilmore. I think he's the best corner in football. Yeah. My issue with that is, like, teams can decide not to throw against that corner. So, like, Aaron Donald, he lines up, 13 inches away from the ball every play. You can't get away from him that much.
No.
So I'm probably going to Donald. Donald is so dominant at his position. I don't think there's an edge rusher that's that dominant right now in the NFL like he is. And I don't think there's a wideout. Those would be the 2 other spots that I'd look to and say, damn, if that player was, if you had an Aaron Donald equivalent at wideout or at defensive end, I'd probably go with them. But the rise of interior pressure, Donald.
Yeah, and he's one of those guys. There's certain NFL players that you look at, and they're all physical freaks in their own right. He's got no punch. Like, he is just ripped. Like, he should not be that athletic for his size.
Right. I mean, those are, I mean, my wife dreams that I look like that. It's just, it's incredible.
Logan wants to know, would you rather have to try and tackle Jonathan Taylor or let Bob Sanders tackle you?
Oh, my. Well, Bob Sanders is tackling me. Chris, I'm in a body cast until Halloween. I mean, it's not pretty. And, I mean, I've got Bob by what? 5 inches, at least 7 inches. What's he, 5'8"? I'm 6'3". And we probably weigh somewhat close to the same. He probably has me by about 5 or 10 pounds. But, yeah, Bob Sanders gets me in a Oklahoma drill, and, I mean, I'm in the body cast.
Yeah.
I'm not coming out of it. Rosie might be talking by the time I come out of it. Jonathan Taylor, for sure. Because you know what? I've got a long wingspan. I can dive and hope I catch a shoestring.
Well, and here's the thing that I went to.
Jonathan Taylor could trip over the turf.
Would you rather have to try and tackle? I can try and tackle Jonathan Taylor. Yeah. I could whiff. For
sure.
But Bob Sanders isn't whiffing on me.
No, he's not. And he's going to make you, pay for it. So, I mean, this is a no-brainer for me. I'm going to attempt to tackle Jonathan Taylor, which also sounds laugh out loud.
Kevin, Daryl hopes that you and the family are all safe and doing well.
Oh, thank you, Daryl. Appreciate that. Same to you.
But does have a question. Will there be any healthy surprise cuts this year?
I don't think so. I think it's guys you trust again. And it's like, okay, did Nico Autry save some money? Nico Autry could be your starter. Like, depth is at such a premium. I don't think you get finicky with, like, watch this. We're going to save a quick $1. I just don't think it's like that.
And you can't afford to this year.
No, exactly. That's what I'm getting at. Like, you're going to rely on everybody. So I don't think you're cutting guys and being like, we'll send a message here.
Question from Clayton this week. The Eason pick intrigues him. If it works out, Ballard looks like a genius for getting the quarterback with the best arm talent in the draft in the 4th round. If it doesn't work, it's only a 4th rounder. Is this Ballard's guy? I just don't see him making a splash with a quarterback in the draft.
See, Clayton, that's where I disagree. That last part. Now, I agree with your first part. The pick should intrigue you. It makes total sense to me. Take a flyer. Trust your coaching staff. Like, I mean, that is, Trust your coaching staff with a quarterback that has traits that you can't teach. So I'm a fan of it, for sure. We talked about it. We did a whole podcast on the Jacob Eason film breakdown of what needs to be taught and what needs to grow in his game. So I'm a fan of it, but I think Ballard knows it. I mean, he was a part of that Kansas City room for a long time before they made that trade for Ballard or for Mahomes. So I actually think he would. I don't think this is the definite franchise quarterback. No.
Tito/DJ.
Oh, we had a couple questions on this one, so I just combined them for you.
Okay. We have heard that Jacoby will be used for 5 to 7 snaps per game. His assumption is it'll be plays between the 5-yard line and the goal line. With his athleticism and willingness to give up his body, he could be more of a threat. Do you think this could be a possibility, or is Rivers too essential in that part of the red zone?
Again, this is a fascinating question. I'm so curious to see what it looks like. That last part stands out to me. Rivers is essential in the red zone. I think he is. It's compact area. It's reading a defense. It's shorter windows. It's quicker decision-making. It's all of those things. Now, in terms of QB sneak stuff, Chris, I think that's where Brissett comes into play. I do. I don't know how much of it's like an actual read option, like shotgun, Rivers or Brissett in space. Like he's going to scramble. He's going to make a guy miss in space. I don't think it's that. I just think it's 6'4", 230, put your head down and get a yard. I mean, Jacoby's been great at QB sneaks. I don't think Rivers is a QB sneak guy. I have no freaking idea, to be honest, what it's going to look like, but that's my guess.
This next question from Lucas has also been altered since the press conference this afternoon, but the original question was, Sky Moore is the only Colt so far to opt out of the NFL season. Will there be more potentially, and how important will depth be in 2020 with COVID-19 around, not just for the Colts, but for all 32 NFL teams?
Well, Lucas, the first person I thought of, and again, let me preface by saying it is impossible to predict what these guys have family-wise. I don't know their family history. I don't know if mom has diabetes or, the child's had respiratory issues. I just don't. Like, we don't. Philip Rivers has 9 kids. I don't go to the pediatrician office and see the assembly line from 9 a.m. to noon with the Rivers kids going in there. Like, I don't. The first name I thought of when all this started to happen was Anthony Costanzo. That was the first name. He's thought about retirement. He's 30-something years old. He's made a lot of money in the league. And so I asked him on Monday. That was the question I asked him. I'm like, AC, you thought about it earlier this year. Did you think about it again? And he was very candid and very honest and said he took a hard look at opting out. He mentioned that when he had his physical over the weekend, that was the most he's been around people in 5 months.
I heard that, yeah.
This is a NFL football player that is not acting like he's invincible by any means. I like to think I've been pretty careful with this. I haven't been that careful. I mean, like that's commendable.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I think we need to think about here. It's like there's a lot of different backgrounds in an NFL locker room. There's a lot of different stories, a lot of different paths. These guys are all going to think very differently. Philip Rivers came on the Zoom call today and was like, oh, yeah, I never thought about opting out. Like, everyone's wired differently. Everyone thinks about this differently. So, Lucas, again, it's impossible for me to predict. We're under 24 hours. Deadline spur action. Frank Reich's optimistic no one else will opt out. What happens in 2 weeks? Close family member test positive and they're on the ventilator, something like that.
Yep.
How does that impact some of these players as well? So this is a storyline that we'll have to deal with all year long.
Andrew wants to know who is third on the team in receiving yards and who catches more touchdowns, Doyle or Burton?
I'll go with Doyle. Close. But yeah, I think he's just on the field more in the red zone, although I think Trey Burton will play a lot. Okay, third on the team receiving yards. Hilton's first. I'll go with Campbell second. That might be high. Doyle or Pittman for third.
Okay.
I want to say Pittman, but like Jack Doyle is just there every freaking game. It's death by 1,000 paper cuts. Oh, Jack Doyle had 4 for 47. Yeah, you do that 16 games in a row, it adds up.
It does. You're right.
I'll go with Pittman, but I don't feel great about that.
From Ingrieve, Kevin, do you agree with this statement? T.Y. is injury prone. These last 2 years, he's missed 6 games and was a decoy for a couple of the other games, too. It always seems like he's battling through something.
Okay, this is my stance on Hilton. Okay, and obviously we saw on the non-football injury list with a hamstring injury. This is in regards to that question. I look at the Hilton injury prone association like I look at the Adam Vinatieri situation from last year. We can say, and I did say, and I will continue to say, Adam Vinatieri is a first ballot Hall of Famer. I can also say it's time for Adam Vinatieri to stop kicking for the Indianapolis Colts. I can look at T.Y. Hilton and say he has been unbelievably durable in his NFL career until about 2 years ago. And now it's been a lot of days on the injury list, a lot of mispractice, a lot of lower body stuff. And T.Y. Hilton has missed 8 games in the last 2 years. That's 25% of the games played in those 2 years. If it were any other player on the roster, you would raise somewhat of a red flag on that. And we're talking about a 5'9", 5'10" wideout whose game is predicated on speed. So what I'm getting at is this. He has not been injury prone. He was, again, more than durable early in his career. But this is life in the NFL, folks. You reach 28, you reach 29, one injury flares up. You push that injury a little bit quicker than maybe you should, and now another injury flares up, and you're trying to play through that. And he's had 4 separate lower body injuries in the last 2 years.
It's tough.
So I think it is very fair to have a question, have a concern. It's why he's on the prove it list, all of those things in my mind. But I'm not going to sit here and label him as injury prone throughout his career. Like, no, that's not true. At one point, he missed like 1 game in like a 65-game stretch. And hell, even when he had the ankle injury a few years ago, he still was leading the league in receiving. But it gets back to the point of, can you play? Can you be effective? He's now 30 years old. And the injuries, you can't ignore them. So when I saw this, I'm like, okay, it doesn't sound like it's very, doesn't sound like it's the most, it's not like he's just ripped his hamstring off and he's out till November, but his name matters more than most in this roster.
Yes, it does.
That injury matters to him more than other players because he is a wideout that runs 4.3. So I'm going to take note of this, and I'm not going to overlook it.
From Colts Chatter, they love the podcast.
Appreciate that.
If Rivers wins a Super Bowl for the Colts, is he automatically the second most loved quarterback in Indy, or would it take 2?
Oh, no, just 1, baby. Just 1. I mean, how greedy do you want to get? Andrew Luck, and I'll be the first, and I've said this before, I think Andrew Luck's a super nice guy, and there's a lot to like about Andrew Luck. But, okay, a conference championship appearance in a game you lost 45-7. Like, you're not, I assume he's referencing that as, like, Rivers would still be behind Luck. Is Luck the second most beloved quarterback in Indy history, or is it, I don't know, is it Harbaugh?
Yeah.
I mean, Harbaugh was a play away. So, if you win a Super Bowl, I'm sorry, that trumps everything. I mean, everything. Luck had a really nice run here. Cool story. His O-line sucked. I mean, like, it was very impressive what he did. But if you win a Super Bowl, I mean, Trent Dilfer's beloved in Baltimore. It's kind of like.
Yeah.
And, the early reports, Colts say Phil looks really accurate, gets the footwork down, and it's game over. So we'll see if that translates to when it gets real.
I got a quick side note here that's going to probably make me sound stupid, and I don't know if it's because of COVID, if it's because of the amount of questions we get, if it's because of the industry we're in.
Yeah.
I feel like Andrew Luck has not been on the Colts for years. Like, the fact that it's been a year to me, it kind of caught me off guard a couple of days ago just thinking, oh, wow, that was only a year ago.
Yeah, when I tweeted out that Paris Campbell video of practice last week, the 1-year look back of training camp, that was Luck's last practice. So right now, this time last year, we would be into the awkward, Frank, got an update on Andrew. We'd be in that. And, we're nearing the 1-year anniversary of him going out there against the Browns and then doing the whole pregame spiel and then the Bears. So, Man, in so many ways it feels like 10 years, and in so many ways it feels like 10 minutes ago. It's just, that sounds like life in 2022.
Well, let's get to another guy that I feel like Colts Nation loves based on, again, these questions that we get. Wake Spike. Hey, KB, will Jordan Wilkins get a second contract, or is he one and done running back?
Yeah, again, we got a lot of these this week, Chris. He is one of the more beloved Colts in social media realms. And I think what they like about him is this. The dude's averaged like nearly 6 yards per carry in his career. Yeah. I mean, that's, unbelievable. I'll go back to what I said earlier. He's 2 years older than Marlon Mack. I think he's already 26. I mean, that's old for a rookie contract coming to an end. Missed 2 games last year. Having said that, a 1-year deal if Marlon Mack walks, sign me up.
Yeah.
Why not? Is he your running back number 2 on early downs? Jonathan Taylor being your running back 1, Hines on third down? Sure. Well, why? Why not? I think a 1-year deal for him makes a lot of sense. I could also see a one and done sort of thing, because if your team draft a running back in the 4th round every year, maybe that's what you do. But if Marlon Mack walks, running back, and Wilkins isn't up either. I should note that he's a 2018 draft pick, so he's not. He still has another year. So yeah, if Marlon Mack walks, I'm drafting running back no matter what.
Johnny says, "Damn KB, not good for TY. Feels like at his age, once the leg injuries start to occur, it becomes a common occurrence. Quad, calf, now hammy, just not looking good."
Yeah, Johnny, and shout out to Johnny Witcher, a great human being. But this is something that kind of goes off, obviously, the question that we had just a couple of minutes ago. But this is where I have just a Okay, let's see how Hilton gets through this. And it goes back to something we talked about a few podcasts ago, is this, Chris. Remember when we read off those Andrew Luck stats? Hilton with Luck, without Luck?
Yep.
Was it 20-yard difference per game?
Yeah.
I mean, you extrapolate that over a 16-game season, and that's a huge number. That's where we have the question with Hilton. Jordan's question earlier in the podcast, what does our wideout group look like behind Hilton? If Hilton isn't the bona fide one, that puts more stress on Pittman, more stress on Campbell, more stress on Pascal. So that's just why I think we just have to watch all these injuries, especially with a guy that means as much to this football team and unfortunately has, shown up on the injury list quite a lot over the past few years. He has a knack for playing through injuries and somewhat playing well. But last year we didn't see that. Last year it was no 100-yard games. It was 2 big drops in Houston. So was that quarterback? Well, I mean, Jacoby threw great balls, when he dropped those 2 balls in Houston. So it's just, it's fair to have questions. And, I feel like at times we get so black or white with these things of, he's injury prone. He's not injury prone. No. We can ask questions, folks. It's fine to do that.
All right, Kev, we got about 10 more here.
Oh, boy. 10 more. Let's do 10 more is a lot. Let's do, because we're over an hour, aren't we?
Yeah.
Let's do 4 more.
Okay.
Stop with who you got here? Scotty, John.
We got Logan, Scotty, John.
Let's
Tanner.
stop at Tanner.
Okay.
We'll ask Tanner's, then we'll call it a day and save the rest for next time.
Okay, so from Logan, his question is hopefully a fun one that makes you think. Every year records are broken by players and teams. What records do the Colts break as a team this year, and what players break what records this season? Love the podcast.
Wow. Well, Logan, thank you for that question. That is going to make my mind think. Yeah, I mean, every year records are broken by players and teams. Defensively, they want the takeaway record for the franchise. It's crazy to me. I'm writing an article on this. The Colts haven't finished top 10 in the league in takeaways since 2008. Wouldn't you think one of those years you just fall into it? 2009, You were 14-0 to start the year. You weren't top 10 in takeaways that year?
Maybe one of the Jaquel Jackson years where they were playing well.
Mike Adams was picking off a bunch of balls.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, maybe that. Rushing yards would probably be the one I come back to. Rushing yards or rushing yards per carry. Last year they were close. But I think they were over 2,000, but I think that's still like 500 yards short of the franchise record for rushing yards. Yards per carry, I think it's just a hair over 5. I mean, that's a big number.
It is.
Last year, I think they were 4.5. So, interception number, maybe, if Malik Hooker's healthy, could he get that? I don't. Yeah, Logan, those are the ones that stand out to me. Completion percentage, I don't know if Phillip has a great year. I can't see anyone breaking Mathis's sack record, 19.5.
No.
I can't see receiving yards being broken. No one's touching, Edge or Dickerson's got the franchise record for rushing yards in a season. So, yeah, Logan, I don't have a great answer.
A wild one this week from Scotty. You're a mad scientist, and you wanted to make the perfect quarterback for the Colts in an accelerated growth chamber for next season. You get to use the DNA of a current and last generation quarterback. You can use 3 total DNAs to combine. Who would you pick? His picks are Mahomes, Luck, and Manning. Probably a weird-looking dude, but could play lights out. Also, speaking of evil geniuses, do you think Belichick is encouraging players to sit out the season to tank so he can get his next quarterback?
God, no. We had a couple questions about that. I saw Gary's question about the Patriots. The Patriots have lost the equivalent of Braden Smith, Darius Leonard, and Kari Willis. Do you think any team is purposely telling players to opt out? Like, how do you do that? Tell them to don't play football. Don't that $10 million deal. No. We don't want you to take that.
Mm-hmm.
No, that's just Colts fans and how they think about the Patriots is just wild to me.
We hate them.
Yeah, and I get it, but holy shit, I mean, that's wild. Okay, DNA. I don't know 100% what he's asking. I'll say this: give me Michael Vick's legs. Give me Patrick Mahomes' arm, and give me Peyton Manning's mind, and I'll go win a lot of football games.
Yes, you will. Yeah.
Lamar Jackson's legs, maybe. I don't know. Vick, I think back to the Run Mike Vick, Mike Vick highlight in Minnesota. Yeah, give me that. And I'll have a Madden dynasty for years.
Speaking of the Minnesota, John's question touches on that a little bit with the running back play. Could Marlon Mack and Jonathan Taylor's situation be comparable to someone like Chester Taylor and Adrian Peterson? Taylor in 2006 had 300 carries, 1,200 yards, and 6 touchdowns, yet the Vikings still drafted Peterson 7th the next year, and in Adrian's rookie season, he had more carries than Taylor.
Yeah, welcome to life as a running back, man. I mean, we saw it even a decade ago. Chester Taylor, talk about a name.
Mm-hmm.
Think about the Colts that year. That's Joseph Adai and Dominique Rhodes. I mean, you saw that, and then all of a sudden you see Donald Brown a few years later get drafted in the first round. It's just how running backs work. So I don't think it's going to be that drastic. I think Marlon Mack is I think, has earned it a little bit more than Chester Taylor earned it at that point. And to be fair, Adrian Peterson was generational of generational.
Yeah.
That was freak as freak. And then you also have to factor in third down. Taylor and Mack aren't playing on third down. At least you don't expect them to play that much. So I think they're going to just switch off series and kind of switch off just first and second down duties. So I don't think it's exactly like that, John. I think Marlon Mack has more respect than that.
And from Tanner, if you could bring back any player traded or released during the Ballard era, who would that be?
Oh, wow. This is a great one. It's I'm trying to think back to players that Ballard has traded or released that have gone on to do something elsewhere. And there's not a lot of them. I've stood by my John Simon stance.
Yeah.
He was good enough for the Super Bowl Patriots. He certainly was good enough for the Colts. I still think Deion Kane had more to groom and to try and tap into and to trust your coaching staff. So he would be one. But they haven't really traded a lot of players away. They haven't really released a lot of unfortunately the Colts haven't really had a roster that's we can release good football players. They just haven't been there. It's been a lot of retooling of this roster. Maybe you debate some re-signings, not re-signing Pierre Desir we could come back to,
Yep.
Not re-signing a Jabal Sheard, something like that. I'd say purely from entertainment, Chris, I think about this, and I actually I do think Ballard has made the right moves in what he's done with the draft, but I think back to what happens if the Colts kept the 3rd overall pick in 2018 and not move back to 6 overall. Obviously, that was the right move to make, and you've gotten an incredible haul with that pick. But if you stay there at 3, are you drafting Bradley Chubb 3 overall? Is it you're at 3, you might want to trade up to 2 and take Saquon? Is it, I don't think you would have taken a quarterback there. I think you still believed in Luck at that point. And then this past year, what happens if you stayed at 13? Are you taking Jordan Love? That's something that I think about. So purely from a draft entertainment standpoint, I probably think about that more than I think about who they've traded away, which isn't many players at all, / who they've released. No one's really gone on to do anything, which is, I guess, a good thing. That means you've cut fat. It also means that your roster, and this doesn't fall on Ballard, it's probably more a Grigson thing, that your roster doesn't have great quality depth, which is now different.
Well, Kev, I do want to get to one more question.
All right, who we got?
Because it's timely, and it will be determined before we get to the next podcast, more than likely.
Okay.
From Ben, will Tiger make the cut?
Ooh, I am glad you threw this in there. Okay, so we're taping this at 4:22 Eastern Time Wednesday. Tiger says his body feels great. I worry about the marine layer out there. That's not good for his body. A lot of sweaters he's going to have to wear this week. You laugh. This is life of Tiger now.
I know.
He's got a bad back, folks. I like the morning-afternoon draw. And for those that don't understand that, he's teeing off early tomorrow morning and then Friday afternoon. I like him having, over 24 hours to get ready for the Friday round versus if he would have been Thursday afternoon into Friday morning.
Yes.
He needs time to rest, folks. He's got a decent history at that golf course. He plays public golf course as well. He's a Stanford kid. That area has been good to him. I'll say yes. But I'm not crazy confident. I'm worried about the weather. I'm worried about a big golf course. Bethpage stands out to me last year in the PGA where he really struggled, but he says his body feels much better than it did last year at Bethpage for that PGA. So I'm going to say he makes the cut.
Okay.
I am, but I'm not expecting anything. I mean, obviously I'm cheering. I'm obsessed. This is Rosie's first major with right now. Rosie Bowen has never seen Tiger Woods playing a major, and she knows TJ Warren as being the best player in the NBA. That's what she knows right now.
It's welcome to a new generation.
Yeah, talk about life in 2020. So, yeah, Ben, Tiger will make the cut. Come on.
Okay. Let's see if we're wearing red on Sunday.
We'll get to those other questions next week. He's Chris Presley. I'm Kevin Bowen. Everybody have a great week. I don't know if Frank Reich's going to stick to these Wednesdays. Maybe we'll come back next Wednesday.
Okay.
So, yeah, hopefully no other crazy news. But enjoy the podcast. Enjoy the weekend, and we'll talk to you next week, everybody.